Hi, and welcome to a look at a graphics card that I got cheap off eBay very recently. It was sold as just an ATI graphics card. They didn't know what it was. They just gave the serial number. I guess that put bidders off because nobody else bid, and I got it for super cheap. But it's quite an interesting card. It turns out that this is a Hercules 3D Profit all-in-wonder Radeon 9800 SE, and not only is it a normal 9800 SE, it has potential to be much more, and that's what we're going to take a look at today. So this thing launched in 2003. Its direct competition in terms of Radeons were the 9600 and the 9600 Pro, which were launched from ATI themselves, except this thing has everything that a 9800 Pro has, apart from it only has 4 pixel pipes instead of 8, but it still has the full 256-bit memory bus, and there's a reason why it only has 4 pixel pipes. At the time, I think it was the yields on the silicon for the 9800 Pro was not great, and ATI had to do some quality control to make sure that sort of dodgy chips didn't end up on 9800 Pro cards. So the way they did that was they would take a whole wafer of 9800 Pro silicon and just test a small proportion of it, and if it got a certain number of fails, the whole wafer went into the bin, which meant there were a lot of good processors on that wafer as well as some bad ones. All of the processors on that wafer ended up in the SE line, so that meant that some of these SEs did have bad silicon, but some of them also had perfectly good silicon. Once my card arrived, I started doing some reading and found out there were some soft mods that would allow you to potentially re-enable the locked 4 pixel pipes, so that sounded exciting. There were a couple of ways mentioned that you could do it. One of them was flashing the BIOS with a 9800 Pro BIOS, I guess, and the other was to use some things called Amiga drivers that I remember using back in the day. Amiga drivers were cool. I think there was a guy called Angel Trinidad who made these drivers for both Nvidia and ATI back in the day. They're basically unofficial drivers that allowed all sorts of extra bits of customization and such, and also soft mods on things like this where ATI had removed functionality, and these drivers potentially would allow you to re-enable it. So the main aim of this video isn't so much to review the card and look at its features, which I'll probably do at some other point, but it's just to see if I can get some more power out of this and see if we can get those 4 pixel pipes back in action. So looking for a roughly period correct machine to try this experiment in, I've chosen the Silver Beast, which I made a video about a little while ago. If you haven't seen it, the machine contains Athlon XP 2800 Plus, 2 GB of RAM, and it's got Windows XP Media Center version on it, I think. So it should be a nice platform to see if we can get those extra 4 pixel pipes working and see what kind of improvement it gives us. The machine previously had my HIS Radeon 9800 Pro in it already, which is handy, so it means I don't have to put any new drivers on. So we've got standard ATI drivers on there to begin with, and the way I'm going to test this is to just run this over a few benches as it is. Then I'm going to compare it with the actual proper full-blown 9800 Pro, and then we'll soft mod it and see what that looks like. So the test begins, and to begin with we'll take a quick look at Everest Home Edition, and all this really shows is that it really is identical to the 9800 Pro, apart from the fact that it's only got 4 pixel pipes, and you'll be able to see in a bit when we look at the same stuff for the actual 9800 Pro. And yeah, it really is just that one number that we need to change from 4 to 8. That's the aim of this. The way we're going to test this is to run 3 scenarios on each version of the card. So starting with the vanilla install of the 9800 SE, no mods, going to run 3D Mark 2003 at 1024 by 768, everything else left as default. And the reason why I've chosen this is primarily because it's DirectX 9. I want to do a mix of DirectX 9 and DirectX 8 stuff, and this should just give us a good sort of benchmark, because I know just from reading around, I think that the SE you'd expect to get around a 4,000 score on this. And for the Pro, you'd expect to be getting about 1,000 more. So that will give us a good sort of ballpark thing to aim for. So we'll see how the standard version gets on with this. And the scores are in, and it's kind of what, well, it's probably a bit low actually. I was expecting around 4,000 from what I read about this card, but 3,714, so it's not too far away. And when you look at the frame rates on the games, it's always the same for that first flying game. Everything seems to do well, but yeah, it struggles after that a little bit. So we're down in the early 20s, apart from the last one, the nature one, where we're almost up to 30. So, you know, it's not a stellar performance, but you'd have to tweak back, but it is a synthetic benchmark, so we'll get a better idea when we look at some games. Now for some games, and we're going to look at Doom 3. Not a game I've ever benchmarked before, so it should be fun and interesting. And I think it's quite a challenging game as well for this card and possibly this processor as well, so it'll be interesting to see how it does here. It turns out nothing's really changed with the way you run these things. I thought things might have evolved by Doom 3, but now it's still just the same time demo 1. Choose a map. So yeah, it's sort of stutters through this, and we came in with a score of 21.6. So not great, but there's scope to drop the resolution there, and I didn't really adjust anything else. So there we've got our ballpark figures for DirectX 9. So the final game for the benching is one that I love dearly because I played so much of it back in the day. Well, I played the first 2, I've never played 3. I really need to get hold of it. But yeah, Dungeon Siege, which is a DirectX 8 game, so it's just a bit of a comparison there. And we can take a look and see what kind of frame rate we got there. And this time we had an entirely respectable average frame rate of 42.8, so well, this one's playable on it if nothing else. So the next thing I did was get the 9800 Pro that was already in the machine and put it back in. So this will give us a nice benchmark to see that if we do succeed on getting it up there, we'll be able to compare the unlocked 9800 SE with the real silicon. So that'll be interesting. So running through these same 3 tests with the Pro was kind of as you'd expect. The 3D Mark score was 5,302, so that was a little bit higher than I was expecting. It's like it stole the extra 300 from the 4,700 and something that the SE had, and the frame rates on the game demos were all okay. So it's in the hundreds for the flying game, in the mid-30s for the other 3, so all kind of okay. In Doom, we were getting 36.7 frames a second, so playable at that resolution, and it totally was doing super well, reasonably well, 47.23 in Dungeon Siege. So this is the benchmark that we're hoping to raise the SE2. So that'll be the next thing we need to do, is get that thing modded up, get the existing drivers off, and then we should be good to go and install the Amiga drivers. It's quite a slick little installer. You've got drop downs, and you can see you can just load the normal drivers, but there's the driver for the 9600 SE, which is what we're looking at. There's also one for the 9500, which I believe you can use these drivers to up the 9500 series to 9700, I think. So that might be something to have fun with in the future. And then you pretty much follow it through. You just have to be careful, because in some cases it's asking you if you want to overwrite more recent versions of files. But in this case, you always say yes, because they've been specifically chosen because of the functionality they offer. And apart from that, it's a pretty straightforward thing. Drivers installed, just have to reboot, and we're just coming back into Windows and see if anything's happened. It booted up okay, and that's one of the first signs, I believe, that if this doesn't work, it quite often locks up. And the other thing you see as you come into Windows is corruption of some kind, and I'm not really seeing that. So if we go into Everest Home Edition, look at that, the number of pixel pipes has doubled, so we've got 8. Still says it's an SE, but yep, it seems to have enabled those 4 pixel pipes, so Cool. So I loaded up 3D Mark 2003 to give it a go, see how it works. The Windows desktop looks okay, but unfortunately this is what I saw. So it does unfortunately look like this card has bad silicon. It allowed me to enable the extra 4-pixel pipes, but clearly not good, and there's a lot of artifacts all over this. So yeah, it's a bit disheartened. I should probably have tested this first before making this video, but I want to do it in real time. And it has revealed some things that I didn't remember much about these Amiga drivers, but I've got the option to upgrade a 9500 series card as well, and also in the future maybe I'll pick up another 9800 and try and see if we can get softmod to work. But yeah, there you go. You take your chance, and it either gives you a free upgrade or it doesn't. There's some people on Twitter actually said that they'd done this and it didn't really give them much of a performance boost, though it'd be interesting to see if that was true or not. But alas, this time it didn't work. So there you go. A bit of a shame, but what can you do? I still think it was a fun little exercise to do, and I've learned a bit more about the Amiga drivers, and I'll keep them in mind. I know I've got some 9500 series cards somewhere, or at least one, that I can dig out and try and upgrade it to a 9700 using these. And I'll also keep an eye out on eBay for cheap cards going that I might be able to experiment with as well and possibly get a bit more performance from them. But you do forget, in the world of retro like we're doing, everything's on a sliding scale, so you would probably have really wanted that performance boost in 2003 so that you could play better games. But in the future, in 2023, it doesn't really matter, because you can move this card back into a machine that uses components from 2000, and it would actually be quite a powerful solution. And it's an interesting one as well. I've got all of this all-in-wonder video magic stuff on it and TV tuners and what have you, so I'm looking forward to having a mess about with that. I've always wanted to try and get the full suite. This thing came with a remote control and a dongle for inputs, so I might try and see if I can get hold of those. And the original software suite had all sorts of video editing stuff on it, so it'd be nice to get those bits and pieces and experiment with the card. But there you go, left with a mid-range card, but it was worth a shot. So that just about wraps it up. I hope you found this interesting, even though it wasn't particularly successful. And all I'm going to do now is play out with Dungeon Siege, one of my favorites. So it's a slightly older game, DirectX, and this card handles that pretty well. So I'm going to enjoy having a little play with it, play out with a bit of Dungeon Siege, and just enjoy this card for what it is. And hopefully in the future we'll find something that I can upgrade with these Amiga drivers. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next video. Bye.